Hi, welcome to my book corner. I'm Ben. Today we're taking a look at a book voted for by you wonderful people. Young adult novel Straight Expectations, the debut from Calum McSwiggan, and this came out in May of 2023. We're going to take a look at the story as always. We're going to have a bit of a focus on the main character of Max as well, and how he develops throughout the story. We're then going to look at some of the positives and negatives of this title, before giving my final thoughts at the end, so a bit of a change of format today. So let's just jump right in. So the premise of this is one that will be familiar to anyone who's watched rom-coms. The story follows Max. Max is an out and proud gay young man, 17 years old, and is coming to the end of the college or the sixth form year. It's the last year of sixth form, and everyone is preparing for the next step in their life, the proper step into adulthood, for want of a better term. And he's feeling a bit like his college years have not been what he expected. He's happy, he's with his best friends, but the college experience, whatever that may or may not mean, is something that he doesn't feel like he's had. This is made worse by the fact he has a massive crush on a young man called Ollie, who is in the same year. And he's never made a move because he doesn't believe he's good enough for him. He classes himself as at best a 6 out of 10 on a good day, whereas Ollie is an 11. Meanwhile, his other friends, Dean and Alicia, who are the two main sort of supporting characters in this on top of Ollie, are a lot more put together in many regards, and they have decided what they want to do after college, and they're going through their application processes. While all this is going on, they're preparing for the end of year sort of drama performance, which is going to be this great big extravagant sort of event. Max has helped almost like as a fashion coordinator for the outfits. Alicia has designed a load of the sets, and Dean is very much the star of that show, and has been for several years at this point when they've done the end of year shows. All that's going on. They have a sleepover, they're having a chat, and they're doing the pretty normal thing of, if you could make one wish, what would you wish for? And things get a bit heated here, as what Max wants is to be with Ollie, because he's missed that experience. He's not had his first kiss. He's still a virgin at this point. All these different things, and he feels like he's missing out. And his friends are trying to point out to him there's plenty of time in the future for all that stuff to happen. There's loads of hot boys in your future. Don't worry about it. Stop obsessing. There's more to life than boys. And he feels like he's not being listened to, and he gets angry, and a massive argument ensues where he's pointing out that they know what they're doing. They've had all this stuff. They're so good. Their success is guaranteed because of how good they are. And an argument breaks out about white privilege versus racial prejudice and gender prejudice as well. And as it gets really heated, he tears off a friendship band that Dean made him, and basically wishes for the easy straight life. He goes home, clearly upset, wakes up the next day, doesn't feel quite right, gets to school, realises everything's just slightly off, and then when it turns out that he's going out with Alicia, he suddenly thinks that maybe this wish has come true, and this terrifies him. Goes back home ill and starts really taking stock of his room. And this is where things become very clear that things have switched round. His clothes are slightly different, so tops that he'd accessorised or cropped before are now just plain and normal. The same clothes, but with a little bit of pizzazz taken away, a little bit of that creativity removed. His adult search history is very much not on the gay spectrum anymore. Posters around his room, for example, the key one, Ariana Grande, was the only one that's still there from his previous life. All the others are different, and he realises that while the poster of Ariana Grande was there for being a gay icon, that's not why she's up there now, because right now it's having an aubergine effect on him. Words used in the book. And as he starts to go through this new world, his parents are back together, but they're still arguing. Dean's vanished, he's not there anymore, he's dating somebody else. And the confusion, he starts to realise that actually maybe he's wished for something without realizing what he was going to lose. And you have the story here of him trying to make things right and get back to how things were before, and you get the realization that the grass isn't always greener. There's a reason that this sort of concept is used quite a lot in comedy and sitcoms, as there's a mine of information and stuff you can use here to create some really good sort of comedic set pieces, and the book does that really well in some places as well. It's a really strong sort of idea to build this sort of thing around, and is actually pretty solidly done. Max is the main character, and as you start the story, he's living at home. His parents have split up, although it seems to be a relatively amicable divorce. They're both very supportive of him and who he is, which is important because of something that comes later. He has a diverse friend group of different genders, sexualities, so on and so forth. And it does show him struggling against some homophobia in school, and touches on some historical stuff as well, and how he came out and how he approaches things in general. But with all that said, unlike his best friend Dean, who seems really self-assured in who he is and what he wants to do, he doesn't really have any direction. He sort of lacks a little bit of self-belief. He's shown to be quite fashion conscious, and that is something that actually develops over the course of the book and is a running sort of through line throughout, and pays off really nicely at the end as well. But the really interesting thing is what happens when he makes the wish. And at first he thinks, I can go with this. Maybe it's not going to be so bad. Maybe I can learn to be straight and live in this new world. His parents are back together, although after a couple of days he starts to realise that they're arguing just like they did before they split up. Dean has vanished, he's no longer around. Ollie's still there, but he's not attracted to him anymore. But Alicia, well, Alicia's his girlfriend, and he's very much had the high school experience, the college experience with her. Some of his relationships are very different as well, with like some of the parents, some of the teachers. And in fact, there's subtle changes and nuances to multiple characters throughout this because of the choice of the wish. And the further into straight Max he gets, the more he realises that things aren't as rosy as he thought they were going to be. The grass is very much not greener. And this does mine some stuff for really good comedic effect as well. There is a reason that sort of comedy and sitcoms quite often mine this, for want of a better term, body swap idea for comedy gold, because there's a lot of stuff you can do with this. When he accidentally goes, well, I say accidentally, when he's in his room, when he's realised what's happened, he's looking around, he realises that all his posters have changed except one, a poster of Ariana Grande, gay icon for him as previous life. Here is straight Max. That's definitely not why he's got her pinned on his bedroom wall. It has a very different effect on him here. He goes and looks at his sort of adult browsing history and accidentally sets that off, and you've got this actually quite funny set piece that happens as things go horribly, horribly wrong. And you also get Sally unraveling, because obviously he has his knowledge of other Max, not this Max, so he keeps making these mistakes that are confusing people, and his behaviour's changed because he's trying to fit a different person into this body, and he's trying to fit in but can't quite. And eventually realises that what he's wished for was actually really stupid because of what he had before. And that's really important. What this doesn't do is say one's better than the other. What it does say is be aware of what you've got, accept it, and run with it. And he goes through a phase here of trying to make things right, which eventually he does, and it reverts back. And when he gets back to his previous life and he sort of makes his apologies, he has the confidence in who he is even more at this point to decide what he thinks he wants to do with his future, to make the move. And it's actually quite a, although he ends up in largely the same place as where he left, relatively happy, out and proud, there's a bit more confidence there, a bit more belief of just going with the flow. And that's an interesting character arc to have developed. It's helped by the supporting cast he has around him. There's multiple different personalities that surround him in this. They're not all necessarily particularly deep because the focus is very much on Max here. But that being said, they act as interesting contrasts and help inform his character and his decisions, and they all make sense, and you can see why some of the things are as they are and why he is how he is and why he ends up with the decisions that he makes. So the character work is really, really good overall for Max in particular, and solid all around for everybody else. The good. It's quite a bit. We're going to start with something that doesn't really affect the book at all, but the cover. I saw this in Waterstones not long after it came out, and it was a cover that drew the eye because it's so bright and so colourful, and the subtle nuance difference between the two pictures of Max on the cover are actually really well done, and some of it you don't necessarily pick up on straight away because they are close but not identical, and that's really well done. And that actually makes me want to have a graphic novel version of this. If that was ever to happen, I don't think it will, but I think that'd be a really interesting way to actually re-release this. And there's another reason for that. What Calum McSwiggan has done, and it's done an exceptionally good job of here, is writing a novel that you can picture in your mind. You can almost see this as if it was on a TV screen, and some of the sort of set piece moments in here you could tear out of a sitcom on the TV. Really well done, and credit where credit's due. For a debut novel, that's not an easy thing to do, but because of how visual that is, I'd love to see this as a drawn piece of work, especially with the art style on the cover. So major props there. The other thing, Max's character arc. I've seen a little bit of criticism from a few people online saying that he starts and finishes in the same spot, and I kind of get that, but it's not totally true. Now, he does start off comparatively happy, supported, comfortable in himself and gay. He ends up in all those places with confidence, and that's the key difference, because this is not so much about accepting who he is, but having the confidence to just go with the natural flow of life. And by the end of the book, he actually has some level of self-confidence. He makes the move with Ollie. He starts to come up with an idea of what he might want to do when he leaves college, and that's a very subtle sort of character development. It's not a big massive shift, it doesn't fundamentally change who he is, but it's a refinement of his character, and I think that's a really interesting way to do things, because quite often when we talk about character development, they get from point A to point B and it is a massive jump. In fact, it's not even A to B, it's quite often A to E in how they develop, and this is very much a more incidental change in character, and I think that's especially well done. It also overall does a good job of dealing with prejudice. Now obviously it's 2023, prejudice is not as bad as it was when I was a teenager, but it does still exist, and this does look at the online aspects of things as well, which is very different to when I was growing up. But it deals with multiple different types of prejudice from all different points of view. You have the gender prejudice, you have sexuality prejudice, you have racial prejudice in here, and it comes from multiple different points as well, so you get the whole sort of go around of how prejudice can work here, and it's generally touched with quite a light touch, almost universally throughout the book. The other thing, the humour overall for me landed. Humour is a very subjective thing, so mileage with this will vary, but I overall thought the humour in here was pretty decently done. I enjoyed it. The set pieces, some of them were really good as well. So overall, there's quite a few good things in here. So no piece of work is perfect, and this is no exception. Whilst I enjoyed it a great deal, there are a few things in here that I had some issues with. The first thing, and this is going to sound like an odd one, is language, or specifically dialogue. So I need to proviso this a little bit. I am obviously, or I presume obviously, not a teenager at this point in my life. I haven't been a teenager for decades at this point. So language has changed since I was at college. And that's perfectly normal. Language adapts over time. And also I live in the UK, and anyone who spent any time in the UK will realise all you need to do is go 20 miles down the road and the language changes so much, be it through accent, dialect, or just word choice. And I live in the north of England. This is based a lot closer to London, and that might play into it as well, but at times it felt clunky and off and not particularly natural. But again, that might just be on my part an age thing. I'm fully willing to accept that. The other thing I have a small issue with this is to do with labels or stereotypes. So I need to explain something here very quickly. I personally have an issue with labels. I find them to be incredibly unhelpful, and overall I think they help drive prejudice in general. And my best point in this book is where Max wakes up and goes, I am not straight Max, I am not gay Max, I'm just Max. He tears the labels away and accepts who he is because he is himself. And that for me was the highlight of the book. It's only a tiny line, quite late on, best part of the book for me. The supporting cast overall, however, are all pretty well trodden stereotypes. And you have quite a lot of yin and yang effect in here. You have the supportive teacher and the homophobic teacher, and they're exactly the teachers you'd expect them to be based on stereotypes. And that lack of nuance, I think, actually hurts the book a little bit in the message it's trying to give across. The other thing as well is the humour. Now, I touched on this in positives. For me personally, it overall landed really well. Not everything does, but again, humour is very unique to the individual, so mileage will vary on this. Some people will absolutely love this book and find it riotous. Other people are going to make this book's going to feel like a cold fish to them. They're just not going to get it, and that's fine. It is a humorous book in many regards with a serious message, but humour is a key point in here, and that could leave some people cold. But overall, that's it for the negatives. So with everything being said, do I recommend this book? And yes and no. Part of that is because by its nature this is a humorous book in many regards, and humour is so unique to the individual that I think some people will love this, some people will hate this, and I'll stand by that. I enjoyed this. I thought this was quite a fun book overall. There are some parts in this that I did not like. There's some parts in this that actually made me laugh out loud, which is an unusual thing for a book. This does go in high B tier for me simply because I don't think this is a book for everyone. But I also need to say, for a debut novel, the way this is written is really strong. The way that it can make you visualise some of the scenes in here is exceptional, and I really appreciate that. But that's just my thoughts on this. I'd love to know what yours are. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you all next time.